So creating, I think, an environment of trust and openness where men can actually just be people, like individuals. And oh yeah, I've got these raw emotions and I struggle with this insecurity, and I, you know, men worry about their body too, like all these things, you know, like that we're taught doesn't really exist in the masculine realm. Having a place to be honest about that is amazing. I think that's an amazing culture that you're bringing up there.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is another iteration of our community interview series for the Anarchapulco 24/7, 365 community. And today I really have some, tremendous guests, Greg Papanicolas and Cody Limbaugh. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and we'll just go from there. So, Greg, if you want to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, so thanks, Michael. Let's see, I've been an anarchist for about, I want to say 6, 7 years now, and proud to be a part of that community as, it continues to grow. I've, had the fortune of going to Anarchapulco this past February, and I love being around everyone that shared the same philosophy. It was almost so overwhelming that I had to take a couple of breaks, back to my hotel and kind of wrap my head around the whole thing about how overwhelming it was, to be around so many great people. And I know that Cody has been to it a couple times too, and man, it was everything I thought it would be and more. So as I continue to build the community, I've had the fortune of meeting a lot of people through these groups and Facebook, and I started Project Sparta mainly because I wanted to kind of shrink all of the noise, get rid of all the noise of Facebook, and kind of whittle it down to a group of mostly men who we're looking to build community, and of course, we're used to all the trappings of Facebook and all the distraction and all the impressing, trying to impress women most of the time. And I wanted to kind of build a group that would, basically try to build a group that would be a little bit more honest and share experiences between the men involved, and build the community based on that. When I started my company, Anarchy Lifting, I was generally sort of focused on all kinds of people. I was focused on any anarchist and anybody who, was looking to change their fitness levels or improve their fitness. And I was not really geared towards men, but I figured I'd change that focus this time around and, basically work at developing those relationships with most of the men in the community, because we need each other. It's a harsh world out there, a harsh status world that we're trying to live in the 3D status world. So we're trying to build a community around that, and I appreciate what you're doing, with Anarchapulco in this group. So it's great to be here, and I'm really glad to be a part of it.
That's appreciation all around, my friend. Cody, how about you?
Well, let's see. I'm up to quite a few things. I've been writing for probably 12 or so years, kind of picking out a blog and trying to find my voice in that area. I have been a strength and conditioning coach for about 15 years now, and so we were actually going to collaborate last year, but I just couldn't quite get the timing to work out for me and my wife with the upcoming wedding and all that kind of thing. We were engaged at the time, and so I didn't make it to Anarchapulco last year. But I'd say I've probably been an anarchist for around 10 years or so, and started to really question, a lot of the paradigms that we're taught as far as left and right, and it's interesting because, what led me to become a voluntarist was boiling things down into very basic, let's back up from what we've been taught and just think about some very basic premises and axiomatic truths, and let's work our way back up from just a very foundational reasoning that's very difficult to argue from, and that pretty much takes you to voluntarism. Like there's very little wiggle room when you start back at just axiomatic truths and you work your way through that in terms of ethics, or at least what I think is reasonable to call ethics there. But in my personal life, it's interesting because you can become a philosophical anarchist or a philosophical voluntarist, but you're still stuck in these paradigms that we all live in, especially here in the States. I can't speak for all over the world, but I imagine a lot of it's the same. We have a debt structure that carries all the way down into individuals. We very much have a debt-based economy at this point. And we have a lot of paradigms of what is taught to us as success, or how to achieve certain levels of success even. And I think when we're taught certain things going through school and the media and everything that's just, we're information overloaded, we come to accept that, oh yeah, this is success and this isn't success and this is what I should be doing. And there's a lot of shoulds in our lives. And so my writing in the last year or two has been really a matter of questioning all of these shoulds. What are these shoulds that we're taught? And we can get even away from just ethical questions and political questions and think about the questions that we have for ourselves and how we're leading our lives, and whether those shoulds are really applicable, or if we're just doing those because that's what we've been taught. It's what's been working all along. And so I've started to question things that are, a lot of people would think are very basic success principles, like setting goals, and really question, well, is that the best way for me to achieve? And Bruce is getting involved here. So
cameo experience, cameo.
Yeah. It's time for his walk. We walk the cat instead of the dog. So see, we're just questioning all kinds of paradigms. So that's kind of where my focus has been over the last year, and it's made some huge impacts in my personal life. So I'm just eager to share that, and some of those ideas have been culminating into my upcoming book. And so that's pretty much, I think, gets you up to date on what I've been up to since my last Anarchapulco and seeing you, Mike. So that's where I am.
Yeah, Cody, man, I tell you, I've followed your blog and some of your writing for quite a while, and I've got to say it is tremendously helpful and useful in regard to how much you personalize and bring it from really the heart. I was just reading that that blog that you had in regard to procrastination.
Yeah.
And man, it really did change my perspective quite a bit, because it's certainly something that I think a lot of us suffer through, is what we think is procrastination, but in a lot of ways it's procrastination because it's really not what we want, it's what we should be doing or what we think we should be doing. Mm-hmm. Can you want to just briefly hit on that?
Yeah, that kind of brings me, in a larger perspective, a lot of what I'm writing about there is when I question these paradigms, a lot of it is questioning myself. And I think that's why my writing is so personal. That's where I have, to speak from, is my own experience. I certainly don't know what's best for everybody else out there. But when you turn the tables on that, you read a success book and they're teaching you this how to, or the way things ought to be. They also don't know what's necessarily best for me either. They don't, the author doesn't know me. And so I think we get pigeonholed into these things that we ought to do. But then you look around, it's like, well, we all suffer from these things that we take upon ourselves as burdens. Things like missing a deadline, missing goals, having a goal that was achieved, but it's not quite the way we wanted it. or we procrastinate on something, and then we beat ourselves up for procrastinating. But this is a universal phenomenon. Like we all know what I'm talking about, because we all do it. We all suffer through it. And so I'm questioning, like, well, why do we even suffer? Why are we suffering with this idea, which is a lot of times just self-inflicted? Like, oh, I wanted to do this thing by next Thursday, and now it's, you know, Wednesday at midnight, and I haven't even got started yet. And you're beating yourself up mentally about this thing that, you know, your neighbor doesn't even know exists. Like nobody else is depending on you for this thing, but you're inflicting like psychological damage basically on yourself by trying to live up to some standard, instead of questioning, well, why didn't I get to that? Maybe this task isn't all that important to me. If it is important to me, what are the factors that maybe I'm not good at? Maybe I have some insecurities. Maybe I have some fears surrounding this. Maybe it's a time for self-reflection rather than self-abuse about why you didn't get something done. You know, and it's helped me to just kind of turn those ideas on their head and think about, well, procrastination could actually be a tool. This is a tool for self-knowledge. This is a tool for determining what I really want to get out of my life. And it really even broadens this topic up to, like, what do I really want to be doing? Because we can set ourselves up for this vision of success. Well, I want to be like, you know, the Wolf of Wall Street lifestyle, you know, oh, I want that yacht or whatever. But if you understand the daily life of someone who gets up at, you know, 4 a.m, and, you know, if you're on the West Coast here, you know, you're getting up at 3 a.m. to do East Coast stock exchange work, and you're doing this, and you picture the actual lifestyle of somebody who has gotten to that point, let alone the dishonesty or whatever else is involved ethically. But it's like, man, I don't want to work 17-hour days. I don't want to be in that, you know, I don't want to associate with those type of people. I don't want to do that kind of paperwork. Like, there's a whole list of stuff I don't want out of that lifestyle. You can keep that yacht. I'm okay. Because, you know, we wake up with our coffee and we walk through a beautiful neighborhood and we walk the cat, you know, and Bruce follows us around the block for a few hours. We look at these beautiful trees around us, and it's like, wow, I am really experiencing a lot of joy right now. I don't need to beat myself up about this deadline I didn't meet or whatever, because that's a societal expectation that we are some sort of machine-like animal that works with predictable patterns and has predictable results. You know, this the whole paradigm of going to school for 12 years and then going to, you know, higher education for 4, and it teaches you this methodical, oh, it's, yeah, ma'am, may I go to the bathroom now? You know, the basic bodily functions you have to ask for permission for. It just blows my mind that people think that's normal. It's just weird. And we're fit into these sort of paradigms of schedules and, you know, 8 to 5, and this is your lunch break, and all of that. And it's just like, man, it's just weird to think that we expect ourselves to fit into those when we're organic beings, you know. And there's just a whole slew of different ways of looking at these things, like procrastination, goal setting, and timelines, and specific achievements, and those kind of things. So yeah, it kind of opens up into a big topic there.
You know, and this kind of leads into back to what Greg is doing with Project Sparta. You know, it seems like what he's trying to encourage people to do is be a lot more honest and effectively do the things that you're describing, Cody. But Greg, chime in here. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think because everybody's coming from different backgrounds in, you know, this space, you know, you don't want to sit there and force. People don't react well to have these ideas being forced on them, and they want to do things on their own time. And you know, it's funny that Cody mentions that, because I mean, I switched to online coaching for that reason. I was committing all of those hours and all that time into, you know, okay, I got to, you know, teach this person, I got to coach this person for an hour. I lose that time, half of that time driving. I spend the money to drive out there, and it was incredibly inconvenient for me and the family. So I decided finally, I said, I got to take this to a place where I can utilize the time better. And, you know, I can sell results instead of sell time, because that's essentially what I was doing. I was selling the time instead of selling what I was good at, which was getting results. So, and I know that Cody can attest to this. It's like you're committing a whole lot of time, just to people that sometimes they may cancel on you. They may have something come up, and you got to adjust to that. Well, what this did was this online coaching, that I started a year ago. It validated what I was doing, but it was also better in a sense that I didn't have to be so rigid with the schedule like Cody talks about. It's like I could be part random with when I decided to do what I needed to do for scheduling a weekly meal plan or a customized program, and I could do that whenever I wanted, and I didn't have to worry about being at this place at 3 o'clock because that was the only time that this person could be there. And then of course when that person goes on vacation, there you go. I lose that time. I lose that benefit, that time that I'm investing in it, and reward. So, that's funny because I think really people that are more balanced in that approach, part schedule, part random, depending on your own philosophy. It doesn't force you into situations where you have to say, okay, well, this is when I have to be there, and if I'm not there, I'm going to let everybody down, and it could be really aggravating. And I like to be reinvigorated by having a balance of being able to work on my own time and having the time freedom. So, that was the goal all along, and I think Cody and I have always had that in common of trying to seek that out and have that be the goal, because then we can kind of decide what we want to do and create content and write books. So.
Well, specifically, just kind of experiencing your efforts in regard to the Project Sparta group.
Yeah.
I think you're demonstrating something that I think is really valuable in regard to me, as far as someone that's a coach and somebody that really wants their customer to do, to get the most benefit, is you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so you throw out a bunch of questions and get people to start exploring this stuff. But these are like fundamental questions that most people aren't spending any time asking. Why do you think that is?
It's interesting because I think we're either on it on Facebook generally for a lot of people are on sometimes for self-promotion, and I get that, and that's something that is specific to someone's goals, and that's fine. But I think with this group, I wanted to get an idea and network around and see where people's heads were at as far as how they are sort of adjusting to this almost inversion of what truth is and what we should be experiencing as men. And I think when I created it, I saw plenty of the people that I knew that I wanted to join, and I had a good connection with a lot of you, and it was important to me to start off with a good sized group of men that I knew could be great at being a good representation of what I wanted to create. And I think for the most part at the start, it's really been an incredible experience thus far. And sharing those questions, I think people generally aren't thinking about those things because a lot of that stuff is kind of uncomfortable for people that answer most of the time. And when you could tell that people would hesitate because I'd see them, I'd see the typing, the little typing at the end of the message, and then I wouldn't see anything for a while. I'd come back and that person would comment. I'd say, well, you probably had to think about it because these are things that are hard to answer. And when you know that you have a good support system around you, of trusted individuals that are coming without as much judgment on Facebook as we become accustomed to. I think that's been the outreach of this and the goal of this all along, and I appreciate everybody being a part of it. We'll see where it goes. I'm definitely excited about it, and the type of things that I'm going to do. I don't want to make it one of these groups that's just going to fire out a bunch of links and have everybody read a bunch of long articles from online sources and waste their time doing that. It's all video and stuff that's interactive and questions that are interactive, I think that's better in the long run for all of us.
Greg, can you give us an example of one or two of these tough kind of questions that you're referring to?
Yeah. So one of the questions I had the other day was, let's see, what are some of the skills that you have? What are some of the skills that you? It was more of a sort of a skill building question. I can't remember offhand what the exact wording was, but I had something involved with outside of your I didn't say occupation. I was more like, what is your income generated passion? Because you don't want to lock people into this situation where they're having to explain, oh God, my job's crummy. Oh, I want to get away from it. I want to start anew. And it's like, you want something. People want to talk about their passion, so you ask it in a way where they can provide that, so where everybody's fire is lit. You're not asking for, what do you do for only 3 hours out of the 8 hours a day that you're locked in an office or whatever you're doing. I think those kind of questions spark conversation and allow people to kind of network and share their experiences better. And I think, let's see, one of the other ones, a lot of them got pretty personal, because I was asking what is one of the things you want to improve on, personally, as sort of an empowerment type of question, personal empowerment type of question. So they're very cerebral, but they're also worded in a way where I want to get people's honest answer rather than, really just throwing out one topic and expecting, a simple answer out of people. You really want to dig deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, Greg, you've done a great service to a lot of people, because you kind of set the tone, by taking the time each day to do like a 4 or 5 minute kind of intro to what's going on, or what you've got in regard to responses and stuff like that. And so I really feel like you're doing something that's really important, and you're doing it in a way that I think people get, they connect. But Cody, you've got a project that you've been doing for a while. Love all your life?
Yes. Yeah.
And I know you've dealt with a lot of people. Is there things that relate here that we can tie in?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I see is I'll write about something to try to get people to think about these same kind of things. What's the thing that you feel is holding you back, or the thing that you need to improve on, or in terms of relationships or your own personal development, or which are go hand in hand. And I get a lot of feedback of people that like, wow, that blog really resonated with me. I needed to hear this today. But the thing that I tend to question is like, well, okay, now what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a real tendency, and I'm guilty of this myself. I have, all these books of personal development and things that I've read for the last, 30 years now. And I'd put down the book and feel so inspired. And then I'd go back to work, the next morning and pretty much just do the same thing I was doing before. And until something changes, nothing changes. And so I feel like self-knowledge is, and these self-discoveries that we have, it can't just be an epiphany, like, oh, I get it. Like one day I get it. And then all of a sudden everything changes. We need to understand that everything is a process and a practice. And until you are able to implement things as a practice in your life, you can't expect a lot of changes. And so I know that Greg has experienced this too, because I think any coach has experienced this, that when you give good information to an athlete, or they achieve something maybe once in the gym or something, but if they aren't willing to take that and put it into practice in their life, then nothing changes. And then they'll come back to you in a year and ask, well, why can't I do this or that, or why haven't I lost this weight, or whatever it is. And like, well, have you been doing those things every day that I was telling you to do, a year ago or whatever? And so I'm really interested in kind of unlocking that in people and in myself, of how to really create change within, because learning through osmosis, like reading and just taking information in, it does have a cumulative approach. Eventually there's a tipping point where change occurs and you integrate things. But I think there's some more efficient things that we can do to implement change in our lives. And so I think Greg's on a good path there. Just like asking questions is huge, because it makes people stop what they're doing and act and think about these things. So Greg, have you experienced that? Is this like, have you guys talked in your group about like implementation of these things as they come up at all?
What's interesting is when the conversations occur, they're more organic. Obviously, it's when you start the process, and when you see other people kind of chime in and offer their own take on it, their own solution to it, that's where the direction that I wanted it to go in, because real solutions are really what's going to take action in the space. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, the feminine masculine balance of, okay, well, the feminine energy shapes the ideas, but we need the masculine energy to put it into action. So when you combine the two, enough of this resonates with people just on an energy field. But I mean, I think for a lot of people that are having issues with putting it into action, seeing the results of it and seeing how other people have implemented the same type of strategy that they're looking to do, or something where they're just trying to get ideas from this person, I think having good representation of that within the group, and individuals that can provide analysis and experience, can share that with other people. And of course, at this point, it's more, I'm kind of in the process more at the beginning of trying to get a feel for everybody on a personal level, and getting a little bit more of kind of more of kind of a personality tendency type of just gathering information based on that, and then later on, as I delve into things that I'm going to be delving into a little bit more about strengthening the relationship with your partner, that'll be more solutions based. But I think right now it's more about gathering the information necessary to kind of figure out what direction I'm going to go in first. And I think more of the organic conversations that I'm seeing within each thread is where I'm starting to see a little bit more people helping out, offering solutions. So I think a lot of it will happen organically over time. But if anything that I'm having experiences in that I feel have been successful in my life and maybe successful to others that I can help them implement, I'll do that as well. So it's kind of going to be a balance of the two.
There's a great book that's I think it's called "What Do You Say When You Talk to Yourself?" And I'm not sure what the author's name is. Helmstedler, I think, is the guy's name. But he outlines one of the things that most of these like self-help books miss is kind of the process that we go through in regard to our own mind of like how we actually make our mind change our own beliefs, and it is a daily practice. Certainly something that Cody mentioned in one of his blogs that I really resonated with is the idea that we really don't need goals. It is really about living in the present and kind of creating a practice, a daily practice that incorporates all the things that we want in some little way that is a part of that journey from where we are to where we want to go. And I don't know, Cody, you want to?
Yeah.
add in on that?
You know, yeah, it's another kind of way that you can think about turning some of these ideas on their head is when we think about motivation or change. And we hear things like, well, that needs to happen from within. And that's true. But then we also have this sort of reciprocal relationship with everything around us. You know, we are part of everything. And the physical world does exist. And so to think that we can just make up our mind to implement change is just kind of a one-dimensional, one side of that coin. It's like an experiment that I think a lot of people have probably heard in motivational talks or whatever it is, about just looking in the mirror and like smiling. Even if you're in a shitty mood, you know, you can look in the mirror and just act happy for a little bit, and acting happy actually does elevate your mood. And so your emotions will really follow your actions. And I think a lot of times we're looking for our actions to follow emotions. Like we got to get amped up, we got to get motivated, we got to change our mind, we got to do this internal work and then put it into action. And I tend to have better results for myself if I start an action first and then let my emotions catch up, you know? And I had a counselor way back in high school actually say this as an example. Once going through a hard time, she's like, sometimes you just got to dance when there's no music. And when you're dancing, eventually, you know, you'll hear that music start up again, and you know, just look goofy on the dance floor for a little bit. It's fine. And you know, just keep moving. And so that's what I found as far as like making those changes stick, is to start some daily practices that are actual physical actions that you're taking. And also, you know, kind of as a cool side effect that I've noticed about myself in these approaches is that I tend to learn better that way too. I love reading. I love watching videos. I consume podcasts every day. Like I love getting information in, but I don't learn nearly as much as when I'm just out there like in the trenches and I'm actually doing work. You know, I can read books on how to become a better writer, for instance, and I can listen to podcasts on publishing and everything, but sitting down and actually typing on the keyboard makes me a better writer than anything I'll ever read. And so, yeah, I think when we talk about making those changes, and like Greg's group, it's awesome to kind of have that mastermind effect going on of people giving feedback to each other, because you're getting feedback from people who are actually implementing things probably. You know, if somebody chimes in, it's probably because they have an experience that is similar or that they can relate to try to help that other person out. So it's not, you know, it's not coming from something they heard or something they read or regurgitating something. So yeah, it's a cool concept to be able to throw those questions out into the crowd and learn more about your community there, Greg.
Yeah, I certainly didn't think that it was going to become the anarchist circle group. You know, it kind of fell into that kind of framework as I was building it. And you're right. I mean, a lot of times the action has to come before all the other ideas are shaped. I mean, when I was, you know, building Anarchy Lifting, it just started with one aspect, and then from there, I had to think of other ways to keep it relevant, keep it entertaining, keep it, you know, not straying away from the philosophy, and that was the thing. It does put you in sort of a mindset that you have to continue to look for ways to improve upon things continuously in any avenue. But again, like you said, you don't necessarily have to always meet, you know, this benchmark that you have in your head that's really, you know, not really existing. It's just something you created in your head, and again, it's focusing so much on, you know, as they say, if you're depressed, you're thinking about the past. If you're thinking about the future, you're anxious. So you know, we want to be in that good place for longer periods of time, so we can stay present and allow ourselves to do that. I think what you're doing is great with the book, and I think a lot of people will benefit from it. Absolutely. Can't wait.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you know, with Anarchy Lifting, I'm sure that what it is today, you probably couldn't have imagined when you first had the idea, right? And so it's funny when we look back on those things and we're like, oh yeah, of course I couldn't have not even imagined where I am now. Like I wouldn't have known to make this tweak here or make that change there. It just happened as I was working through it. But then, even though we acknowledge that, we still have this tendency to want to set goals for the future and think that we can somehow predict the future again. It's like, well, I couldn't predict it back then, but maybe now, maybe now I can predict what's going to happen in the next 2 years. You know, what's my 5-year plan? It's like, I don't fucking know. I'm gonna do the best I can today and keep practicing that, and then just keep trucking. So
yeah, and that was the thing, is everything had to be response based. So I had to see what everybody was responding to before I started shaping the rest of the ideas later on, instead of putting stuff out there and saying, well, I'm going to spoon feed everybody that they're going to like it. It's like the avenue that I sort of paved was, let me put it out there and see how people respond, and if it doesn't work, I'll throw it away. So really it was a response-based type of formula that I was sort of setting out for myself.
I think that's awesome. There's I was thinking about this whole concept of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I'm like, where does that come from? We all know, like, instinctively that you take every part of a car and you lie it out individually, or in a Napa store or something. It's like, well, it's not a running vehicle, but you put it all together and it's like magic. It's like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I got to thinking, well, it's because it's not an additive situation. When you take this person and this person, it's not just two individuals. You also have the relationship between those people. It's almost like a third aspect in the middle of that. That's like a multiplier effect. And so like when you're building your community there, by asking questions, by drawing people in, by getting responses, and then responding to that, oh, okay, here's the direction we can go because that's the responses I'm getting. You've got this multiplier effect versus just an additive effect of, oh, I want 50 clients for this business or whatever.
Right.
Which is just treating everybody as just a number, a part of the car, right?
Yeah, right. And that was the key, is finding, everything was relationship based from the start. And I knew that, when I started to hear the kind of the tone and the way the content was going with and the context of what people were saying, it was like, oh, okay, that I need to go in the relationship avenue first, because that's what right now everybody's having trouble with right now. And it's it's prevalent now, just with trying to find, someone else. You and I have been very, very fortunate, but it's not everybody's experience right away. So but again, that was a way of sort of building some kind of structure so that there would be moments where people could be open up and be vulnerable and not be judged on, the mistakes they said they were making in their relationship and what they could do better, but also, without the female perspective, they were able to be, they wouldn't have to worry about so much judgment from the other side, and they could identify with other men around them. And so far, it's been incredible witnessing it, because there's been so much honesty and just not a lot of judgment. And I really wanted it to kind of take that tone, and I'm really happy about that. But yeah, it kind of went in the relationship direction automatically, just based on that response that we talked about, seeing kind of the direction that I was going to go in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really powerful, man. I think it's, we're kind of living through, I think, a real paradigm shift in many, many aspects of our culture and our society and technology and all these things. But you look at the past, and it's like there's this archetype of what a man should be, and masculinity is very demonized today in our culture, and we hear it like all the time. It's fine. It's trendy right now to kind of shit on the man, and I don't mean the man. I mean like all men.
We'll shit on the man all we want.
But but it's an interesting shift though, because we've kind of gone from being a real man is someone who doesn't show their emotions, who is rock solid over here and is expected to achieve certain things and know certain things and be strong always, and and be, honorable and integrity and devoted and all these things over here. And now we're going to a place where, well, masculinity isn't even that great, and it's demonized, and now it's almost like a situation where I feel like men are retreating. It's just like, well, I can't live up to that old paradigm because it's like an impossible thing to live up to. But I don't know where to go either, because anytime I, like express myself as a man, I'm kind of like pushed back, like, well, you don't have the right to have an opinion about this, or that's because you're a man, or, that kind of feedback. So creating, I think, an environment of trust and openness where men can actually just be people, like individuals, and oh yeah, I've got these raw emotions and I struggle with this insecurity, and men worry about their body too, like all these things, that we're taught doesn't really exist in the masculine realm. Having a place to be honest about that is amazing. I think that's an amazing culture that you're bringing up there. So.
Yeah, and really right now it's only existing with most of the anarchists in the community, but as I branch out systematically, maybe, bringing open some more individuals outside of the community, again, there could be some strong influence from us, as the community as we go forward, because, maybe there's a lot of people outside of it that are still sort of struggling with how to adjust to, this paradigm that's been forced on them, and how do you fight back? Because they may not find it anywhere else. So maybe they find it in here. Maybe they, maybe in other places in their own lives, in real time, they're not experiencing that same amount of support. So I wanted to, provide that for them. And I don't want to make it so closed off that it's only, to the people that we're used to being around. I want to branch a little bit open and see where it goes from here, and maybe add some people that are still struggling altogether. They're still human beings. They still have, strong emotions and struggles just like us all. So I think that was primarily my goal at first, was to build the community that I knew that I could trust to put forth, a lot of the same ideas and information that we've grown accustomed to in the anarchist community, and then have that influence on the people outside of it.
Absolutely. And just to get back to that whole idea of practicing too, what you're providing is really powerful. I'm fortunate enough to be with a partner that has helped me to really open up, and vulnerability and honesty are just like the cornerstones of our relationship. Like, we come together on everything. There's just nothing to hide, but what I'm finding through that relationship is it's a practice of being vulnerable and honest and out that's allowed me to like take that on, and I can like put that into my writing. I can put that into my relationships outside of my romantic relationship, and because I've been practicing, and so you practice somewhere where you feel more safe, and then you can take that a step further, and you can start to apply that to your other relationships, to your interactions out, all over the world. So it's really life-changing to be able to have an outlet to practice talking about those things. So it's really powerful stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And I think what I was generally looking for at the beginning was better ways to communicate. And I think that, when you're communicating with your loved one, and you're in a place where you're the expressor and they're the empathizer, or you're switching roles, you become more accustomed to the things that were some of the trappings as far as defensiveness, things that you may experience every day with somebody who's not your partner, that you're struggling with, or maybe somebody within your community, that may not be, you're not seeing eye to eye with it. Okay, so how do we solve the conflict in a nonviolent way, and what are the best ways to do that? And that's why I'm sort of moving towards strengthening the relationship, not just with your loved one, but in life. And I started, the first couple of videos were the expressor intro, how to express in a way that doesn't breed defensiveness in your partner, and then from the side of the empathizer, how do I show empathy on the surface, and then how do I show it through my words, you know, by not just repeating back to them what I'm hearing, but also what they're implying. Because if you go deeper into what they may be telling you, now they really understand that you're listening to them, like, intently. And so you're building those skills. And I learned all that from just, you know, a lot of coaching and strengthening my own relationship, and learning some of the things that I have over the 15 years of being married. So it's been wonderful to see the some of the changes in people already when they're, you know, private messaging me, and it's I think, you know, to go from here and then, you know, with your book, it's I think will really have an impact on, you know, a lot of the people that may be still stuck there in that paradigm, and they're looking elsewhere and finding all kinds of different answers, you know, on the internet, and maybe this sort of slows things down for them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, guys, one of the things that I'm working in regard to my project is I think one of the things that people are really not cognizant of is knowing value and knowing harm, and recognizing the you know, the valuable things that, you know, more than likely aren't monetized, that aren't represented in money, but also the harmful things that we all are, you know, conditioned and programmed to do to ourselves in a lot of ways. I think we mentioned a few of them at the beginning. But what do you see in regard to how people miss, like, in particular, the harmful things that they're doing to themselves through you know, themselves, or through their relationships, or their jobs, you know, their potential? What are you guys seeing in that regard?
Greg, you want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. You know what, I think, you know, a lot of times with the stresses that we put on ourselves, it's easy to fall back on the old habits, you know, as far as, you know, things like self-medicating and having to deal with stresses in that form. So that self-harm is type, you know, a lot of that has to do with just, you know, the everyday stresses of maybe fitting, you know, trying to fit into that paradigm, you know, that we're taught. And I think that all started from when we were, you know, taught in school and shamed a lot of times for not performing up to the benchmarks that were set arbitrarily by the school system. And, you know, when that happens, every person is impacted by that, most of the time in a negative way. And, you know, it's crazy watching it take place still after all these years, you know. And I think a lot of where those habits come from are, you know, what we're taught, you know, in the institutions and even in the family. You know, those things can completely shape us in the wrong ways down the line, and usually that it's almost like that crisis doesn't happen until, you know, 30s, 40s, where you finally wake up and go, my God, what just happened the last, you know, 30 years of my life or whatever, and then everything just sort of flips under, you know, the other way. And then, you know, I'm sure that many people have experienced this, but it almost seems like it's clockwork every time. But yeah, I tell you, I always think that the institutions and school system are generally what you could point to as sort of the catalyst to some of the behavior. But again, it doesn't mean that you can't take responsibility and say, hey, some of this is, you know, been my own dealing, and I've dealt with, you know, times where I was, you know, doing things to myself where I was saying, well, that, you know, that I don't think that came from the institution. I think that's just me being, you know, ignorant, and you know, and punishing myself for things that I didn't deserve to be punished for. So again, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's influence from environment and of course the choices we make throughout life.
Yeah, I think your answer really feeds into what I was thinking initially, which is that not everybody really is living a self-examined life, even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like that, you know, Sam Harris mentions this as a terminology a lot, like to lead a self-examined life. And I really appreciate that term because it brings to light just kind of how I want to live. You know, I want to pay attention to what I'm doing. And and you make up a good point there with this, like the institutionalization of our learning. And it's funny because, you know, if I watched this documentary on apes a while back, and ape mothers actually don't teach their ape children things. They just do things, and the children watch, and they pick up things as they watch, and they absorb. And so it's a very self-directed sort of process where the children of the tribe will pick up skills by watching and practicing and doing, and they sort of get pulled, you know, this way. And in our society, it's a top down, everything's pushed down on us, you know, from the very, very young age. You know, we have this like Head Start programs where, oh, now you're, you know, preschool, where you can go in and be around an authority figure who's going to teach you how to structure your day, how to do this. And I think we've created this sort of dependency class, not just in the terms of like the left, right, political realms will describe a dependency class as people who are on welfare. Well, we have this whole dependency class of our entire society that expects knowledge and information and direction from somewhere else. Like they're kind of waiting for somebody to tell them what to do, because that's the way we raise our children in our society for the most part, you know, waiting to be told what to do. And in the process, we lose again, we kind of get away from the practice of having a self-examined life. You know, a lot of people, I think they're told by their boss what to do. They're told by their significant other or TV or school or whatever about what things ought to be. And then when they're not living up to it, they beat themselves up. And you were talking about self-medicating. And it's like, there's a lot of ways to practice escapism.
Right.
And sometimes escapism is something I've written about recently. I don't even think I've published it yet, but it's just like, owning up to your mistakes can also be an excuse. Like, well, I'm shitty. I didn't do that. I'm lazy. I procrastinated. I did this. Beating yourself up is still not really taking responsibility for your life. And that is not a self-examined life either. Like just acknowledging your mistakes isn't a self-examined life, you know. A self-examined life you ask yourself questions, you know, and you pull yourself toward curiosity and wonder and presence, you know, staying present and those kind of things. So, but I think you're right. I think a lot of the institutionalization of our people just gets people into the habit of just waiting for solutions to come their way instead of taking an active role in their own life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that spontaneity that you're not taught. I mean, everything in the school system is left brain based. Everything is rigid. Everything is schedule. Everything is, you know, permission. And again, nobody comes out more creative than they came in. They lose their creativity. Everybody that you know graduates and you know they come away with less knowledge actually than they came in with, because again, there's no curiosity anymore. You've been told to repeat and regurgitate, and now I got to figure out how I'm going to sit and please someone else for the rest of, you know, time. And you know, I think that's been beaten into us for a while. I'm glad a lot of us have broken out of it, but there's still so much work to do, helping others break out of it, and still kind of unwinding some of the leftover residual of that, because stuff could last forever for a lot of people. So unwinding that can take years and years and years before you even pinpoint where that came from, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, Mike, what's your experience with like the sticky point? Like, if I turn the question around on you.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I've been doing some interviews with Johnny and Sterling Lujan and Bob Podowski, you know, in regard to human potential. And you know, I've I've got this project I'm putting together. I call Local Dynamo, which is, creating, that unlimited energy that everybody wants to have for their particular project or the path that they're trying to pursue. I want to give that to our community of people, but it's a effort that it takes all of us, because we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and it's really hard for us to see the weaknesses. And even in myself, through my development and understanding, it's been something where every year, I'm in my 50s now, and man, I'm discovering more and more about like what you mentioned, Greg, in regard to, holy cow, where's all that time went? I thought I was on the right path. I was climbing this ladder and I was going to get to the top, and now I realize that was just completely in the opposite direction of where I wanted to go. Man, what am I doing? So there's that kind of stuff, but it really does come down to like being able to find people that you can trust and be honest with, and be able to get honest feedback about, what was it that I just experienced, and why was I doing that? I mean, it is one of these things that reading a lot of books is another thing that I've been able to do. I used to be a career professional where I'd work 90 hours a week to boost my career, to get to the top. And, I put a lot of that other stuff like reading books and, all my curiosities and stuff like that. And when I finally decided to give that kind of stuff up and actually work towards what I wanted to do, I spent a lot more time reading and watching videos. And man, I'm telling you, even though most people were like, what in the hell are you doing sitting in front of the computer for 12 hours a day? I'm learning. I'm actually finding out the things that I'm curious about,
Mm-hmm.
and holy cow, man, was I way the fuck off, But I want to be really cognizant of your guys' time. We're almost at our hour. How do people find you? And if there's anything you want to wrap up, please wrap it up. But talk about the projects you got going on, how people can find out what you're doing, and that kind of thing, and we'll call it from there.
Cody, you go ahead.
Right on. People can find me at loveallyourlife.com. And the book that has been referred to a few times in this interview will be released hopefully by the end of the year, if not maybe around January. But it's a good time to join my email list, because everyone on my email list will get a free copy. I'm just going to give it away to anyone who's currently following my work. So if you go to loveallyourlife.com and sign up on the newsletter list there, I'll keep you updated with the book, and you'll get a free copy when it comes out. I usually only publish about a blog post a week and then one email a week, so you won't be inundated with a bunch of spam, but that's pretty much what I've got going on there. Thanks, Mike, for hosting this too. I really appreciate both of you guys' time. Greg, it's great to catch up with you. I haven't, you and I used to chat once in a while, and then I've kind of taken a fast from social media and taken some time to get away from that interface because it was becoming too much of a habit. And so,
right.
But the unfortunate side effect of that is there's a few people that I really cherish that I've lost contact with, and you're one of them. So I appreciate seeing you, and it's awesome to hear about what you've got going on. So really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, and you too, man. Definitely keep in touch. And I know that the interface you talk about, I sort of have to be on it all the time just for the sake of business. But but I think there's plenty to capitalize on, in that space. But I don't give up on the things outside of social media that I could impact others with. And I think you're doing that more than anyone right now. And I really appreciate the efforts and your efforts. And I'm going to definitely read that book, and I look forward to delving into some of that stuff and putting it into practice. And it should be awesome. I'm at anarchylifting.com. Anybody can find me on there. T-shirts, all that kind of stuff, and it's mostly I mostly do my I call it semi-blogging on there. I don't do a whole lot of writing, but when I do, I'll put something up on the site. But most everybody can find me on that website, and of course, the Anarchy Lifting Project Sparta, which is mainly the online coaching that I provide, customized meals and customized training for people that are busy and on the go, and people that are just looking to change their bodies and change their lifestyle. And then of course the private group, Project Sparta, which is all on Facebook. So they can find me on there, and I'll add anyone that is looking to join it, and looking forward to strengthening that group. And as we go forward, really excited about the future of that. And so Michael, thank you again, man.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate both your guys' efforts and what you're doing. The energy you're putting out towards the community, really, really greatly appreciate that. I don't know if you guys are interested, maybe we'll revisit this on a regular basis. I don't know if you want, maybe, monthly or quarterly or something like that. We can get together and kind of revisit and talk about what the new developments are and stuff like that. I think, one of the things that I want to do in regard to what I'm trying to do with this kind of venue is, establish the community and kind of introduce people to how we work together. It's one of the things that I think most people are lacking when it comes to, kind of the pursuit of anarchy. It is one that's kind of a soul mission of sorts, where we kind of get separated from the group, and that's when we really start to see things. But in doing so, we kind of lose some of the opportunities to work together, and understand that working together is really an important part of getting things done. Because we all we're not an island unto ourselves. And so, gentlemen, again, man, greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for taking the time. And that's a wrap.